Hello there, it's Friday, which means it's time once again for the best movie podcast ever. The only movie podcast to offer objective and hyperbole-free discussion of every movie in the known universe. I am your host, the podcaster with no name, and with me as always, destination unknown, Ruby, Soho, it's Anthony James.
Gunslinging around the world. That's what I was going to say.
My introduction there will only make sense to anyone who has seen AEW's most recent pay-per-view, All Out. Everyone else, it's a rancid song. That's as much as you're getting. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I think it's funny. I'm tempted to talk about that now, but I'll refrain. But yeah, doing very, very well. I did also watch it. It was good fun, and looking forward to talking about some movies, Konrad. What about you?
I am also looking forward to talking about some movies, principal among which is Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead. We came here for an effing shootout, to quote Tom Hardy in, what was it called? Legend? That movie where he played the Cray twins? That he says that in it.
Sure.
He's a lot more Cockney than I am, but yeah, lots of shooting out will be done in our discussion of Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead. We've got some interesting ideas proposed by Wonder Woman 84 director Patty Jenkins. She's basically annoyed the internet, and we're going to have a look at that. Okay. And we are back with another box office bonanza. So I say, let's talk about some gosh darn movies.
Let's ding dang do it.
Movies. The Wire isn't one, but we're going to talk about it for the next 5 minutes or so because, very sadly, we found out this week that Michael K. Williams, star of The Wire and loads of other stuff, passed away this week. Anthony, have you seen The Wire? I can't remember if you have or not.
I have not. Sacrilegious, I know.
Kick him off the podcast. You heard it here, folks.
Yeah. It's a movie podcast.
It is a movie podcast, that's true. But we're going to talk about The Wire. It's prestige television. The lines between between television and movies have never been more blurred than they are now, and also were in 2002 when The Wire came out. I don't know where I'm going with this. Basically, The Wire is a phenomenal TV show, and Omar Little, the character that Michael K. Williams played in that, is a pretty formative character for me. He has, like... He's essentially like a kind of Baltimore modern Robin Hood style character, and is one of the most quotable kind of anti-heroes in any TV show that I think I've ever seen. He essentially robs drug dealers, and is easily one of my favourite TV characters ever. Okay. And I think important to note about Omar as well is that he's probably... I'm trying to think whether this is the case as I say it, but he's probably one of the best representations of non-heterosexual characters that I've ever come across. Particularly in 2002, when I think it's safe to say the world was a very different place in 2002 when it comes to representation of gay or bisexual characters. Omar is gay, I believe, but it's never... I feel like in a lot of stuff in 2002, and even later than that, to be honest, if a character was gay, that was like the defining characteristic of their character. And his sexuality was very much incidental to who he was. He was also like a badass who robs drug dealers and had amazing rivalries with Avon Barksdale and Stringer Bell in that series. So it felt very, very important for the time, and the image of or the footage of Omar rolling down the street with a sawn-off shotgun whistling nursery rhymes as he robs drug dealers has stayed with me for some time. And he also played Chalky White in Boardwalk Empire, which is admittedly a series that I watched a bit less of because I got a bit bored of it, but he was great in that as well.
No pun intended.
No, I as I recall, that is brought up at some point.
How bored you were of Boardwalk Empire?
Oh, I see. I thought you were making a play on words on his name. No, I was bored. Yeah, Boardwalk Empire. I was bored and walked away from it after a season or two. I'm gonna say he was also most recently in a show. I don't know if you saw this, but I think I might have recommended it to you, called Lovecraft Country, which is kind of like. It's not a perfect show, but it's a really cool like reimagining of the Lovecraft mythos and kind of repositions it as a story of like a black family making their way across America, and there are monsters and Lovecraftian stuff is happening, but the kind of the covert or sometimes overt racism of America in the 50s and 60s is the main kind of villain of the show. You know, that you're just as likely to get chased out of town by cops for simply driving while black as you are to get eaten by a werewolf-looking monster. It was a really good show, to be honest.
I didn't watch it yet. I remember you recommended it to me, and also Brent the Middleman, who is a frequent commenter on this channel. On his channel, he has actually went through the show episode by episode. To anyone who's interested in that, I really want to watch it though, because I'm a big fan of, remember, Jonathan Majors, who was in Loki, and as well as he's in the Last Black Man in San Francisco as well. Yeah,
it's well worth checking out. As I say, I don't think it's perfect, but it is still very, very good. And I like anything that can kind of sand the edges off of Lovecraft, let's say, because I think there's a lot of cool stuff in Lovecraft, but it's kind of impossible to escape the Orientalism and otherness, and sometimes just outright racism of Lovecraft's writing, which is pretty bad even at the time that he was writing it. So to see something kind of reframe it as a story about race is really fascinating. But yeah, so Michael K. Williams, he was in a bunch of stuff. If you haven't seen The Wire, Anthony, you should go and check it out, because it's probably the best cop show. I mean, I hesitate to even call it a cop show, really, because it's about so much more than that. But probably the best cop show I have ever seen.
Okay, maybe I will then. I am a fan of cop shows, so I will give it a go.
It was funny when we were going through a rewatch. We're actually on season 4 at the moment, and my partner is also a fan of like the CSI or Law and Order or whatever, which I don't like, and it's so funny going from Law and Order to The Wire and back again, because like in The Wire there is maybe like one moment, I think I might have even said this on this podcast before, but there is like one moment in an entire season of The Wire where they're like trying to catch up with a suspect, and he runs from the scene as and there's a chase sequence, and that literally happens every single episode in Law and Order. It's like you can set your watch to it around the half-hour mark. A suspect is going to book it through some alleyways, and they have to chase him.
Well, those are very much rinse and repeat. Those shows. Yes. Quentin Tarantino's couple episodes of CSI, I've said before, were fantastic, and you should watch them.
Yeah, I always forget that he did that. I should check those out as a self-anointed film fan. I feel like I owe it to myself to see that. But yeah, so Michael K. Williams, very sad to hear that he's passed. Go and check out his stuff. There is so much good work that he did. Now from a very sad but positive story about someone's amazing work that they left behind, to Patty Jenkins, director of Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 84, and I'm trying to remember what else she's directed. She's directed a few things at this point. She's annoyed the internet, Anthony.
Okay.
She's gone and done it. She's gone and done it. She's fresh off the heartbreak of the not very good Wonder Woman 84 flopping at the box office, and it's Wonder Woman 84. I don't think it was helped by the fact it was delayed multiple times and then had a split release between cinemas and HBO Max. But the fact remains, it's not a good movie. They could have released that the first time they were planning to release it and just had it in cinemas, and it still wouldn't have been a good movie. But Patty Jenkins, I think kind of partially as a response to that split release, which we have seen some people kind of complain about those in the past few weeks, she has kind of jumped on the sort of Martin Scorsese bandwagon in terms of qualifying what real movies are by saying the following, and I'll be interested to see if you agree with this. So she said, "All of the films that streaming services are putting out, I'm sorry, they look like fake movies to me. I don't hear about them. I don't read about them. It's not working as a model for establishing legendary greatness." So, I mean, what's your gut feeling? Your sort of gut response to that?
This is it's a very interesting point. We are in a moment now where it's very mucky, the lines of what is a streaming service release and what is a cinema release because of COVID. We're in a very mucky moment. I think 2 years ago, I'm going to put my head 2 years ago, before this whole thing, and let's just think about like Netflix films and Prime films before there was any talk of, one, them being in cinemas to be nominated for Oscars, and two, big budget theatrical releases being released only on streaming services. Okay, so it's before all that muddiness. I think I agree with her then. I I hesitate to say that, but I honestly, not that I don't enjoy films made by like Netflix, like original films, like I do enjoy them, but I think there is kind of like a slight lack of theatricality to them. I think that she is right in saying that. Now, whether they're not like they're still real movies, like that's like that's a bit. But she's being hyperbolic. Like we have to give her the credit of being hyperbolic and just talk about the actual point that she's making.
And she is making kind of an off-the-cuff remark in the wake of seeing something which, even though it wasn't very good, she presumably works very hard on, and had its financial potential kind of cut out from underneath it by the split release on streaming services and in cinemas, I guess. I think there's two points or two ways in which I think you can read this that are valid. One, I think it's indisputable to me that movies released mainly on streaming services do seem to struggle to kind of become part of the wider cultural conversation in the same way as a big theatrical release. Now, I don't know if that's a perception or a prestige thing or just because people aren't watching them at the same time, but you definitely don't get those conversations about movies that launch on streaming services in the same way that you would do an Avengers movie that comes out in cinemas or something like that. So I think that's true. And I think to your point as well, I think it's fair to say that about 80% of the movies that are released for Netflix and streaming services are actually shit. Like they're not they're not good movies. Doesn't mean they're fake movies. But there is definitely a lower benchmark for quality in a lot of those streaming services where they just want content. They want stuff that they can fill their libraries with. I think calling them fake movies is a little much, though. And I also find it quite funny that The Irishman came out on Netflix. It did get a limited theatrical release as well. But so Patty Jenkins has actually, in kind of taking the baton from Martin Scorsese, she's actually kind of reached back and punched him in the face as she's taken it. Say, no, The Irishman doesn't count. It's a fucking fake movie, Martin. Yeah. Get back to making movies in the cinema, you fake.
I agree with her. I agree with. I'm going to be honest with you. I agree with her. I do agree with her. I think that when people speak hyperbolically, it's very easy just to condemn the language rather than look at the point. Yeah. And I think that if we were to sit here and say, if we actually are seriously sitting here and talking about it, and our conclusion is that maybe she shouldn't have went so hard. No. She's being hyperbolic. We need to look at the point. I honestly think that she's making a good point. Whenever Netflix and Prime release films that are only for their platforms, they are watched in the first week and then forgotten about. Whenever films are in the cinema, they're in the cinema for a month and a half, 2 months sometimes. They get into the zeitgeist of the community more. And I think that's a really good point, and it's something that maybe needs to be looked at. Because there's a film coming out in the next sort of 6 months to a year called The School of Good and Evil, and Netflix is kind of viewing this as their Harry Potter, for example. 100% people are going to watch it. Maybe book readers will cling onto it a little bit, but people are going to watch it and they're going to move on. You're not going to get a Harry Potter through Netflix these days.
Yeah, I just don't see how it could happen. I mean, I'd love for us to be proven wrong, and maybe Disney Plus is the thing that's going to do that, because it's feasible.
Mandalorian is standard test of time, but they also are adding to existing worlds. Like, if they were to create a brand new aspect of their, business, and then only start, would it catch on in the same way? I'm not sure. Yeah. Like that Justin Roiland Alien comedy animation on Disney Plus. No one cares about that.
I don't even know what that is, but that's it goes to show you exactly the level of kind of cultural conversation we are talking about in terms of things not being spoken about. And it is a shame, because there's good stuff on a lot of those streaming services that is made for them, but it just maybe it's because there's too much content to consume, so it's hard to kind of pick out the gems. And funnily enough, Uncut Gems is a great example of a movie that was fantastic and had a bit of buzz around it, but not as much as it probably would have if it had hit cinemas.
Everyone has a watch list that's 50 to 100 to 1,000 things long, and so whenever I recommend, say if I watch a brand new film, like, oh my god, it's amazing, you should watch it, people are like, yeah, okay, well, then the next time they go to Netflix, they have this list of 1,000 things.
Yeah. I try to prune mine every few months, and it's just like, I can't. There's so many things that I'm quite a little bit interested in watching, but you get a decision or paralysis from the number of options that you have available to you, I think. So yeah, there you go. Netflix movies, fake movies. We've confirmed that. Patty Jenkins, we agree with you. The only fake thing around here, though, around these parts, as Anthony well knows, is my enthusiasm for the game show segments that I force myself to go through. But as a true professional, I'm going to press on now. We're going to move on from Patty Jenkins into another exciting edition of Konrad's Box Office Bonanza.
I genuinely love this.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hello and welcome to Konrad's Box Office Bonanza. This is the exciting game show segment where I have selected 5, not 10 this time, because I didn't realise how long this segment was going, 5 movies from a given year. And Anthony needs to guess, in the style of The Price is Right, whether they grossed higher or lower than the subsequent movie, and that's internationally. The answers are all in dollary-doos, and we will subtract a point for each incorrect answer. And for the first answer, Anthony needs to try and get within 5 million of the international box office. This week's year is 1977. It's the furthest back we've gone. It was the year when the world was introduced to a galaxy far, far away.
Oh.
Anthony, are you ready for Konrad's Box Office Bonanza?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. So, the first movie, you're going to need to try and get within 5 million of this. First movie from 1977 is Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to say Star Wars.
For Saturday Night Fever, I've never seen Saturday Night Fever. I feel like I mainly know this movie from it being spoofed in other movies.
Yeah.
Like, when I think of Saturday Night Fever, I think of the sequence in Airplane where they make fun of it.
Ironically, John Travolta can fly planes.
Can he?
Yeah, he's a pilot, and he can also direct them. He can also direct them.
He should have been in an Airplane then. What a missed opportunity.
Love it. Okay, so...
Oh, I understand. Yeah, that was a good joke. I've just realised that was a gag. It was hilarious! Okay.
I was dancing for the audio listeners. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so I am going to go for... this is hard. I'm going to go 77. I'm going to go for 77 million.
Oh, it's lovely. It's kind of a bingo style answer you've gone for there. Like just funny numbers that you can make funny answers out of. It wasn't 77 million. It was in fact 282,400,000. Saturday Night Fever was a smash success.
That's at the time. That's not even adjusted.
No, I don't think that's adjusted. So it made a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, John Travolta, he was a big deal in the late 70s. He didn't get Grease for nothing.
I think I'm underestimating, or overestimating how much inflation has been. All I'm thinking of is all these old people saying, "I bought a house for $15,000."
Yeah. In 1992, we Gone with the Wind made $30 at the box office.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking far too much into this. I just need to view it like it's modern day, and I'm going to get closer.
Yep. Okay, so it's not a great start, but we'll see if you can catch up. The next film, it's one of my favourite childhood movies. Actually, this entire series of movies are all amazing, but this is one of my favourite ones. It is Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, one of the Ray Harryhausen animations. It's got saber-toothed tigers, it's got troglodytes, it's got metal ball men. How much do you think, or do you think Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger made more or less than $282 million?
Okay, before I say that, I want to apologise to our listeners born in 77 or before. Us doing those voices probably annoyed you. Okay.
It was only 10 years before I was born. Like, I listen, I've got no right to judge.
Yeah. All right, okay. Okay, this is, I'm going to go lower. I'm not going to go round the roundabout.
What happened there? What was that?
I started a saying and I didn't know what I was doing, so I just like continued, and then I really got panicked because I was like, my whole point is that I'm trying not to say it for a long time, and then it was like, this is turning into very long, and now look at me, I'm speaking for 30 seconds.
I love that. That's great. You were desperately looking for the off ramp on that, I wouldn't let you have it. I was like, no, you finish this. You find
like
your
Matthew
off ramp.
Broderick. You know Matthew Broderick is evil Inspector Gadget.
Yeah. A reference I'm sure all of our younger listeners will love. Did you say lower? I can't even remember what answer you gave now.
Lower.
You are absolutely right. Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, as is the case with a lot of Harryhausen animations, beloved but only made 16 million at the box office. So still a decent success by the standards of its budget, but nowhere near Saturday Night Fever. Now this next one, if you don't get this is going to be another Anthony's off the podcast kind of answer. So third movie from 1977. It is, of course, the highest grossing movie of the year. I shouldn't have said that because I've given it away.
Oh, I knew. Don't worry.
Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. Do you think that made more or less than Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger?
Well, I know it made more. I'm saying higher, but also I think this is like, maybe this is just like people in documentaries talking bollocks to make a point in a documentary. But is this the first like blockbuster? I think people say that like this first time like people was like lining up along the block to see a film. I'm sure that's wrong. Maybe that's just people in documentaries thinking like it was the first blockbuster, I tell you, and it was, it wasn't actually.
It was. I mean, I think most people will tell you that Steven Spielberg kind of reinvented the blockbuster with Jaws, which I think was 72, and then there was sort of he and a sequence of other directors would kind of like trade blockbusters. But I mean, Star Wars: A New Hope made $775,398,007. Imagine being that $7 at the end there, like you're the last person to see it, and just tick that up past a nice round number.
That's actually really funny. Every film that's ever been in the cinema has had a last person to buy a ticket. Yeah, that's weird. That's weird to think about.
That was probably like a year ago in some kind of like independent cinema in like bumfuck Nebraska or whatever, where they've only just got it.
That is correct, actually. Yeah, I'm pretty sure bumfuck Nebraska loves Star. No, I'm just kidding. I'm pretty sure that number includes like all the way up. Like that's been shown so many times extra, you know.
Well, it's why adjusted for inflation, Gone with the Wind is still one of the highest grossing movies of all time, because that movie has been repeated and like relicensed in cinemas so many goddamn times over the years that it's still making money. Yes, I did kind of give it away, but frankly, if you couldn't get that Star Wars: A New Hope was the highest grossing movie of this year, what are you even doing? It was definitely a blockbuster. I don't know, it definitely wasn't the first ever blockbuster, and it certainly wasn't the first of like the kind of reincarnation of the blockbuster. That was Jaws. But
I've fallen down the hyperbole trap, Konrad, just like all those people.
But I think, I suspect, I actually don't know how much Jaws made, but I suspect it was orders of magnitude less than Star Wars. Star Wars was pretty important, as it turns out, culturally. Okay, so you kind of know the answer to this next one anyway, but it's just fun to hear how much it made. The next one is one of my favourite movies. It's a star-studded war movie. It is A Bridge Too Far. Do you think A Bridge Too Far made more or less than Star Wars: A New Hope?
Less. We'll go less.
Yes, it made like 100 times, or over 100 times less, or 10 times less actually. Sorry, not 100 times less. It made 50,800,000. It's a great movie. I actually don't know how much it cost, but holy shit! When you talk about star-studded casts, A Bridge Too Far has got one. Easily one of my favorite war movies. Okay. Last one. So you're doing well. You're on 3 for 5. So and my that
highest
last point.
Is 4. My highest is 4, adjusting for deflation.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So 8 I got when it was a 10 rounder. Now it's 4's my record.
So you got you got to. This is a difficult one. I've deliberately left this last one difficult because I've got to challenge you.
Yeah.
This is one of my favourite comedies. One of probably this director's lesser-known films. It is High Anxiety, the Mel Brooks comedy. A very, very funny film. Do you think that made more or less than 50,800,000 at the box office?
I actually have no way of... I'm going to guess this because I have no way of even knowing, really, because... I'm ashamed to say this is one of Mel Brooks' ones I haven't seen.
A lot of people haven't seen High Anxiety. I think when you talk about Mel Brooks comedies, and most people have seen Blazing Saddles, The Producers, maybe Young Frankenstein, and then
Men in Tights.
Yeah, then in our generation, probably Men in Tights, Spaceballs, and maybe Dracula Dead and Loving It, which is a way funnier film than it gets credit for. But this is one of his earlier ones and is very, very funny.
Okay, I think it's more. I do think it's more. I just think that I don't think this is after Blazing Saddles. I'm pretty sure. Is it?
Oh, I actually don't know.
I'm not sure either. Or after The Producers, anyway.
Yeah, I think The Producers was his first big film. I have a feeling Blazing Saddles might have been a couple of years after this.
Okay, well, I think that I kind of feel that he would have had a big hit before this anyway. And comedies are always a crowd pleaser. That's why we all know like Adam Sandler has topped the billion. Let's go for...
Are you saying that Mel Brooks was the Adam Sandler of the 70s?
No. Well, hang on. Who's that an insult to, Konrad, according to you?
It's an insult to Mel Brooks.
Come on. Have you not seen Grown Ups 2?
Yes, I have. I've seen Click and Grown Ups 2, and neither of those movies are good.
But he farted in David Hasselhoff's face. Come on. Yeah, I haven't seen Grown Ups 2, I'm going to be honest with you. See, this is the thing, Konrad. I'm very good at scoping out what's a good Adam Sandler film, what's not. So when people talk about how crap Adam Sandler is, I always think to myself, why did you watch those films? Like, I know how to choose them. I'm only going to watch the ones I can see are going to be good. Like,
yeah, anything that has David Spade in it, I'm immediately like, not watching that. Like, just get rid of that.
Except for Joe Dirt. Come on, that's great. Joe Dirt is quality. Right, okay. I'm going to go higher. Just fuck it. Let's go higher.
Okay, you're going higher. Unfortunately, it's a bad end, a bad finish. High Anxiety was one of his lesser known movies. It still did okay. It made $31,063,038 at the box office, so not a bad return, but not all that close to A Bridge Too Far, which means...
This is what I'm talking about, Konrad. Sorry, just before you go on. This is what I'm talking about, how weird it is, right? 700 and something million for Star Wars, and then 30 million for that, 50 million for something else. It really feels like I was right in thinking that all the budget, like the box offices are going to be smaller, but there was just a couple of films which did amazingly well.
That's blockbusters, baby. That's how they work. You know, that's why everyone wants them. You know, like if you look at like the top grossing movies for, I think most years from maybe 1970 onwards, there's normally like 2 or 3 movies right like up there that have just made a stupid amount of money.
It's like going viral.
Yeah, it is. It is. But like, and you know, this is those cultural conversations we were talking about. Would Star Wars: A New Hope have made that much money if it had released on Netflix? We simply don't know.
Well, no, it wouldn't have, because everyone only pays the same amount of money every month.
Yes, that's true. And we would have all just gathered round like one person's television and watched it in groups of like 10, so it would have made less than 10% of that, I'm going to say. That makes your score 3. 3 for this one. It's not your best score, but I mean, it's not bad.
I'm happy with it. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Just before we move off Netflix profiles, my sister-in-law has a Netflix profile, of course, and she lends it to her parents. I was round at her parents' house the other day, and I created a new profile on the on the Netflix account, and I called it "I Hacked You" with a little X. That was like a
wait. Where did the X go? Was it hacked?
No, I hacked you with like a little kiss sign, you know.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And no one saw me do that, and it's been a week and a half now, and no one has mentioned it in any family group chat or no one's mentioned it. So I don't know what's going on.
They're probably terrified that some ill-intentioned stranger crept into their home and created a Netflix account. And are fearful of what they might do next, so they're just keeping it under their hats. Well, there you go. I mean, you know, if people will share Netflix accounts, that's what's going to happen.
You're gonna get hacked.
You're gonna get hacked.
I technically hacked. I did hack her, so
you're gonna get hacksawed, as what I thought you were saying. You done with the X there. That's not the hacksawing I was talking about, but I do appreciate the segue from Leet Speak into WWF legend Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Now,
Sorry.
There aren't any. I was thinking about a segue then. I was thinking, are there any wrestlers in this movie that we're about to talk about? I don't think there are, but the fact that it's conceivable that there could have been wrestlers in this movie says a lot about the kind of movie we're about to talk about, and that is Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead from 1995. It's a schlocky revenge western that's very, very derivative of its influences, not necessarily in a bad way, but it's definitely wearing its influences on its sleeve, and it is starring Shannon Stone, Russell Crowe, Gene Hackman, Leonardo DiCaprio, and an absolutely blockbuster cast of character actors. Anthony, this is the first time that you saw this movie, is that right?
Yep.
How let's just get right into it. How did you find it?
I bloody love this film. I honestly, I loved everything about this movie. I loved the style of the editing. I loved like the angles, the cinematography, the sepia tone. I love the crazy cast of characters.
Ridiculous cast
like I
of
can't remember his
characters
name, but the magic guy with all the aces.
His name's like Ace something.
Yeah, Ace.
Played by fucking Lance Henriksen as well. Like the guy who played Bishop in Aliens, just like turning up in this to play a ridiculous character.
All like anyone who hasn't seen it, all you need to know before we just start talking about everything about it, all you need to know is that it's basically like it's a tournament where you challenge people to duels, and it's in a western town, and the main character, Sharon Stone, main character, whose name is Alan, has like a troubled past and a potential connection to the mayor of the town, Gene Hackman, who plays Herod, very aptly named.
Yep.
So that's all you really need. That's all you really need to know for the setup of it. And the characters are hilarious. So the guy I'm talking about, I think he's called Eugene Dredd. Is it? No. Oh, maybe that's not him. Anyway. Ace Hanlon. Ace
Hanlon. That's it. Yeah.
Ace Hanlon. You first meet him, and he's got a pack of cards, and he goes, "This is a very special pack of cards, right?" And he goes, "I had an ace for everyone I killed," and he like opens it up, and it's got like, I don't know, maybe 7 aces.
Yeah, that's the best thing about that, because it's not all aces. It's like you think it's going to be like 52 aces, or I can't remember how many cards are in a pack of cards.
52, yeah.
It is 52, but it's like 7 aces and then a bunch of just regular cards. And he's got like this, like he's got facial hair similar to what mine's doing at the moment, actually, like very kind of like pointy kind of moustache, and wearing like black leather covered in aces. Like he's really living the gimmick, and he's a great character.
I thought it was great. The cast characters, Leonardo. I didn't know anything about this film. I'm going to be honest with you, and I said to Konrad as well. I didn't know how much Sam Raimi had done before. Like Spider-Man is obviously, I think most people my age, Spider-Man is when he first came onto my radar. Yeah. So and also when I go see a superhero film, it's not the type of film when I watch it I'm like, oh my god, I need to find out what else that director did. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I never saw or heard about this. I didn't know until the opening credits that that Russell Crowe or Leonardo DiCaprio were in this.
This was pre-Titanic, post What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Leonardo DiCaprio here, so he was a relatively big name, but not the megastar he would become 2 years later in Titanic. My question to you about Leonardo DiCaprio is, how on earth is he 21 in this movie? Because he looks about 14, which makes his I say implied. It's not even implied. It's very explicitly stated. His romantic relationship with the mid-30s Sharon Stone a little bit weird. I have to say.
I to be honest with you, it did feel weird because he looks so young. He looks about 14, 15 in this film. But the thing is, his performance is really, really good. I actually like him as the young kid who sort of has something to prove to his dad, who's the mayor of the town, you know. And I think he plays it very well. He is, I suppose, at the end just a part of the ensemble. They had to have like sort of a Billy the Kid analog in this, didn't they?
I think he's probably the most memorable part of it, and certainly, I mean, we'll get into it when we get to spoilers, but I think the movie attempts to give him a bit more of an arc than the rest of the cast of kind of characters really get. And it's funny. I mean, let's be honest here. The star of the show is Russell Crowe's hair in this movie because, oh mama, that's a glorious hairstyle.
Not Gary Sinese's hair?
Oh, Gary Sinise. He's just... he just pops up in things sometimes. I love the fact that you call him Sinesse and I call him Sinise, and we just seamlessly go between those as well, just to confuse the audience. Because
I will stay Sinesse. I don't know.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's what I want. Gary Sinise pops up in flashback sequences. He's got great hair as well, and it's a good thing that Russell Crowe's hair is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, because Sharon Stone is a bit of an ensemble, I have to say. Like, there are a lot of other characters doing a bit of the work, but my word, Sharon Stone is not a particularly interesting character in this movie, at least to me, and I think she is absolutely saved by all the other bonkers stuff that is going on in this movie around her.
She's very much the straight character, isn't she? And I think
yes,
which you sort of have to have that for this. I wasn't disinterested in the character. Like I bought into her story and everything like that. I just think that they're going for, like, she's obviously filling the role of the outsider who comes into town, but I just feel like they didn't fully commit to that in terms of her costume. I think they sort of tried to keep it a little bit. Like, I would have loved them just to take, like, a black hat cowboy's outfit from a different film and just put it on her. You know, I think they were going to. You know, I think, but I did like the costumes overall. But I just think in terms of her character, to add a little bit more intrigue into her, I think she was a tiny bit bland. Maybe I think maybe you're right. Having said that, if you compare that to like the sort of mysterious out of towners from every other thing, every other Western that this is clearly referencing, maybe it was actually pretty much on point in terms of that. Maybe.
There's definitely like a vulnerability to her character that I think is interesting that isn't present in a lot of those kind of taciturn, mysterious gunslingers that roll into town. I think her performance isn't that strong, I don't think, but you are right. It is kind of like her performance in comparison to a lot of the westerns that this is cribbing from isn't all that bad, because a lot of those characters don't really need to do that much apart from turn up and look tough. And I think it is very clear the influences that this is pulling from. So I mean, you've got Woody Strode, who is he was in loads of stuff in the 60s and 70s, but he is probably, to me, most famously from the introduction sequence of Once Upon a Time in the West, who gets a very brief cameo in this. You get Alan Silvestri, who you'll know. In fact, actually, I had a question for you about this. You'll know him as the guy who scored Back to the Futures 1 through 3, and he's very much channeling like his Ennio Morricone here, with a lot of like wah kind of sounds in the score. My question to you was: is Back to the Future 3's score like this? Because I don't remember it.
Not as on on the nose as this. There is some very cowboy stuff in that. Don't worry, but they still have the ba ba ba. They still have that in there.
Okay.
So they keep the through line through all of them.
Keep the motif. And then you've also got I think they're pretty clearly referencing Unforgiven in this, which is a Western from 1992 that also had Gene Hackman as a bad guy, making him, for me at least, one of the great Western villains between this and Unforgiven. And Unforgiven also has a character who is essentially identical to Lance Henriksen in that it's played by Richard Harris in Unforgiven, who is essentially a charlatan gunslinger who is brutally exposed like at some point in the movie.
Yeah, okay, Konrad, I talk about the gunslingers in general. I just want to say to you, does Sam Raimi have a case against the creators of the Fast and the Furious? Because the obsession with being fast in this film is very similar to Fast and Furious. Like, I can imagine a scene in this film where someone's dying and they're like, but you're so fast, like like in Fast and Furious, it's the exact same,
Yeah, I mean, DiCaprio's the kid is obsessed with how fast he is, which is, I feel like there's a potential joke about his sexual performance that could be made at many points during this movie, and they never do, and it's a shame, because his character could do with taking down a peg or two, frankly. I'm trying to think of other characters who talk about being fast, and really, I mean, there aren't too many. I suppose Gene Hackman is himself, but really, I mean, you look at the cast of character actors in this, and they each have their own kind of weird motivations for things. So we've already talked about, you've got Lance Henriksen as the kind of charlatan ace with the kind of coiffured hair and fancy look, who's actually a bit of a dick. You've got goddamn Keith David as a hired killer turning up to like basically paid by the residents of the town to overthrow the tyranny of Gene Hackman, who is just brilliant. Tobin Bell of Saw fame turns up very briefly.
Also looks very similar to the guy who produces the UK game show Golden Balls.
It's like Jasper Carrot.
He looks very much like Jasper Carrot. I've always thought they were the same person.
Oh my god, Jasper Carrot apparently looks like Tobin Bell after he's been in the desert for like 3 weeks.
He does.
I'm not going to do Jasper dirty like that. I mean, I've got no love for Jasper Carrot, but that's harsh. That is harsh on him. Commissioner Gordon, you may have spotted from the Michael Keaton / Val Kilmer / George Clooney Batman movies, is behind the bar in this, which I just loved. And Mark Boone Jr. plays Scars, who I know from 30 Days of Night, although I thought it was Josh Brolin at first and was about to lose my goddamn mind before I remembered it was just a thin Mark Boone Jr. But
I remember him from Too Fast, Too Furious, actually, saying that.
Is he in that?
He nearly gets a rat through his stomach. They put a...
Yeah, you're right. The Cole Hauser. Yeah, Cole Hauser's Argentinian villain. The less said about that, the better. Almost gets a rat to eat its way through his stomach. But I mean, okay, we've got to talk about the cast of characters because they are the best thing about this movie, and then we'll get into to Sam Raimi's style, because you have to talk about that when we're directing. So I think we'll say we're going to get into spoilers. If you haven't seen The Quick and the Dead, go watch it because this movie is awesome. And we're gonna stay here and we're gonna talk about some spoilers. So you can't really talk about the characters in this movie without talking about Sam Raimi's style, because you've got his very distinct kind of like vertigo zooms and camera rotations into Dutch angles going on all over the place. You've got fun little touches like Keith David's brain flying out, leaving a hole behind it as he's shot in the head, which is just phenomenal. I'm interested to see what you think of this, but my favorite kind of visual, I guess it's a gag, in the whole film is Herod, after he's finally shot by Sharon Stone's character. You see his shadow on the ground, and there's just a hole in his chest, which is not how wounds work.
He would have to be lying directly above the ground, and there would have to be a light directly going through.
Yeah, how does
that shadow work?
Makes no sense. And then it cuts to him, and you can just see the whole, like the sunlight coming through a hole in his chest. It is phenomenal. I love the editing in this and the way this movie is shot, and it's fun. I think you're probably similar to a lot of people of our generation in that Spider-Man was probably their introduction to Sam Raimi. I mean, for me, because I'm a big horror fan, I was like from a young age seeking out stuff like the Evil Dead movies, and this is very much in line with what he was doing in those Evil Dead movies, but somehow even schlockier. And it's phenomenal for that. Did you have a favorite death or favorite character from the crew of gunslingers?
There were so many that were funny. I think the ace guy was probably I laughed the most at him. Yeah. I really liked the way he was like bragging about being two-handed, like he could do just as fast as his right and his left, and then Herod shoots his arm and makes him do the other side.
Yeah, shoots his thumb off on his right hand and then shoots him through the hand on his left hand. It's great.
It is good. I will actually mention here, I don't know how I feel about this actually, Conrad. We're in quite a funny mood here, but I'm going to bring it down a little bit because, okay, even though this is a remake, this is not a remake. This is inspired by a lot of older films. I personally was a bit iffy about, like, these days, if a Western is made, they definitely cannot make one of the only Native American characters like magical. That's like a real that's a real sort of I don't know, stereotype that used to be used in films all the time. After they actually originally didn't even cast Native Americans in the roles, and then they were like, okay, well, we'll have Native Americans, but they have to play mystics and stuff.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right.
This does have that, and even though it's referring to older films, I still think it's 95. Like maybe it was a different time, but they definitely these days you wouldn't see that, you know.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the movie that this really reminds me of is the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie Bloodsport, in that you don't get a lot of time to introduce all your fighters, so they have to be really distinct one-note characters. You've got the guy who's a sumo wrestler, the guy who's like a street brawler, the guy who is like kind of crazy fast and jumps around a lot. And that's fine, and it's fine in this as well, but it's a shame that the Native American character's one note is he is Native American, and the sort of translation of that is that he can't die because he's magical, which is a bit like... It's a bit lame. Like, I have no problem with character being Native American, but, you know, just make him like a badass rather than making him magical.
Or if you want to have a magical Native American, I don't know how the Native American community feels about this. So I'm speaking out of turn, but if I was thinking about it, like if you don't want to fall into the trap of just doing the stereotype, we'll have another character who's Native American too, and nothing like that. You know what I mean? Like at least if you're going to have that stereotype in there, you have to at least show that you have more than that, you know. Why did we need to have them all of the same race except for like the one black guy and the one Native American? Like, yeah.
I mean, at least with I suppose to their credit, Keith David's character's race isn't ever really brought up, which is probably for the best, given I believe the guy wrote this was a man called Simon Moore, and his screenplay is really dealing in surface level stuff, and I think it for the most part it does a good job of realizing these characters in the kind of shallow way that it needs to, and kind of lets the action do the talking for it. But absolutely, with I can't even remember the character's name because he's not mentioned that much. He's got like a kind of native, like sort of stereotypical native name, I think, which is again not great. But okay, talking about things in this movie that aren't great or that I didn't think were great, how did you feel about the sudden emotional scene when the kid dies?
Yes. Okay, so I never actually really bought that Alan, Sharon Stone's character, was like really into this kid. Like, no. I never really bought that. So yeah, I get what you mean. It didn't strike me too much at the time. Like, there is like what I thought was a 14-year-old kid dying. You know. So I didn't want him to die either. But yeah, there was a lot of. You have to also. Are you meaning just Sharon Stone, or was there a general air around the town?
I more meant just the tonal whiplash, really. Like, I get what they're trying to do, but like the movie, like loads of people have died at this point in the movie. You know, Keith David has been like shot to bits, had his head blown off or blown open, and it's played grimly because he's a character who the townspeople have hired in the hopes of killing the guy who is kind of ruling them as a warlord, effectively. But it's still kind of funny. It's still pretty light and fun. And then the kid dies, and suddenly it's like, I don't want to die, and like, you know, it's kind of like this really like. It's delivered better than that, but I'm not an actor, folks. That's not, you know, that's as good as I can do. It's delivered in this like really kind of heartfelt and melodramatic way, whereas a bit like, I'm not sure you've got the chops to sort of suddenly strike this emotional tone that you're going for.
It's like the Canto Bite in Star Wars. It's like, yeah, okay, it's fun Star Wars. You don't have to remind us of war's bad. It's kind of like that. Like, you know, this whole film was about killing people in a tournament. We don't need to be told that death is scary and bad. We get it. Like, you know, we don't need that lesson as an audience. So I get what you mean. Like, it was a bit out of left field. You know, but the thing is, Konrad, you have to remember, he was so fast. He was so fast.
He was fast. He couldn't possibly have seen it. He was literally too fast to see his own death coming. I think that's what we've learned from this. Finally, obviously, the conclusion of a Western, as is tradition, requires explosions and lots of shooting. And I think this one fits the bill. How did you find like the kind of main action sequence that we got at the end of this?
I mean, there was a lot of explosions, but you did miss something. It also needs a revelation from the past, and we find out that Ellen is actually the daughter of the former marshal who Gene Hackman killed. And I will say about that revelation, I really loved the revelation that like, okay, so this, I think a lot of films would have made this mistake. When they were revealing what happened to her in the past, and they had her have to shoot the rope and kill her own father, which, to be honest with you, sucks to be her. That was a really bad shot.
I think that's a reference to Once Upon a Time in the West as well, I will just say. So once again, them cribbing from a decent Notebook.
Okay. So when she had to shoot the rope to save her dad and then she failed, they didn't, most films, I think, would put a little flashback in there to the time at the start in the tavern where, not tavern, what do you call it? Saloon, in the saloon, where, my head's on D&D here.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. In the saloon, whenever she had to shoot the rope to save, was it Court himself? Yeah, it was, yeah. It was Russell Crowe, she saved him. So it was a lot of films would have done a flashback there to show you why that's important in her backstory. Yeah. I actually quite liked the reversal of the meaning in it. You know what I mean? We already saw her succeed earlier in the film. We didn't have to be reminded about it because we already saw it, and I actually genuinely like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because that's a moment for her character which, on completion of the movie, actually gains more weight because you know that she's failed to do that once, and she killed Gary Sinise because of it, which is a shame. It would have been nice to see Gary Sinise in this movie. Well, I guess we did see him in this movie. Would have been nice to see him alive, but
we saw an image of him in Sharon Stone's head. We didn't actually see the real one, but yeah. But yeah, I actually do think that the explosions were great. I like the end. Although my favorite kill in the whole film. Now you were talking about what my favorite character was, so maybe the ace guy. My favorite kill is whenever Gene Hackman gave the guy 20 seconds to leave town and then turned around and shot it. He continues on with the scene and you forget about it, and then he just takes a gun, turns around and goes, "Time's up!" and shoots him from 100 meters away.
There's a lot of good stuff like that in this, to be honest. And it's always. It's very, very heavily stylized, and you can see a lot of Edgar Wright. I know that Edgar Wright is a big fan of Sam Raimi, the guy did the Cornetto trilogy. But you can see a lot of their comedy in this, in the way that they'll start a gag and then they'll go do something else and they'll come back to it, and because it's been left so long, it becomes even funnier.
I can even see a bit of influence from this in Scott Pilgrim, for example.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Okay, well, it sounds like you enjoyed that.
Oh yeah.
What we're gonna have to do it. We're going to have to rate it because it's the first time you've seen it. So to remind everyone at home, half stars are for cowards. We'll be rating this out of 5. Anthony, what would you give The Quick and the Dead?
So I gave this film... I gave Reminiscence 2, I gave Us 3. I'm giving this 4.
Okay.
Actually, I think this is a better film. I like this really, really, really a lot.
Yeah, this is a difficult one for me because I'm always caught up on the core performances of Russell Crowe and Sharon Stone not being very good. So I end up giving this 3 stars, but in the letterboxed parlance, I give it 3 stars, but with a like, because I know it's there are flaws in this movie, but the bits that are good are really good in this movie. Which, if you haven't seen it, first off, what are you doing still sitting here? Go watch it. It's on Netflix now.
I didn't know that. I rented it on Amazon Prime. I was too lazy to check Netflix. I'm an idiot.
I should have pointed you in the direction of it. Well, there you go. You're going to be the number that's just ticked over in the box office for The Quick and the Dead. Sam Raimi's going to get a check for $1 through his door and be like, "What the fuck? Who's paying for The Quick and the Dead in 2021?" And it was you.
Yeah. Happy to give it to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Glad of the business. I'm sure he is as well. Okay, well, that's going to lead us quite naturally to answer one question, as we always do, and that is, Anthony, what is your favourite movie this week?
Superman, with Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor.
Oh, great. You're in a Gene Hackman villain kind of mood, I see.
Oh, yes.
Excellent. My favourite movie is Once Upon a Time in the West, which is basically this movie, but it's less fun. I think that's safe to say. Thank you to Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot for the use of our theme song. You can find a link to their stuff down in the description below. And thank you to you for joining us. Please consider subscribing. We are The Culture Cave on YouTube and the best movie podcast ever on podcasting apps. Yep, that's what those are called. Give the show a like, get involved in the comments. It really does help. And we will see you same time, same place next week.
Draw.